Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Captain's Cabin, and this is the Captain's Log. And tonight we are in the third episode of a 5-episode arc that we've been doing. And I'm waiting here for Instagram to catch up with us. There they are. I have to go click on them independently. So there we go. We are now broadcasting, as you can tell, from a little different format than we had been doing for about 6 months. And this format is what we used to use for the Intrepid radio program. And it allows us to broadcast to all the socials that I am connected with anyway. And it allows you to come on over to the YouTube channel and you can chat with us over there. After the Captain's Log tonight, we'll stick around for a while. And you can come in and comment. You can call into the show. And it's not the technical Captain's Log that we do that. It's after show. So, and that's actually where the Captain's Cabin originally came from. For those of you who don't know, we would broadcast for an hour the Intrepid radio program on radio. And then we would cut out a radio and we'd stay on in the YouTube and we'd do the Captain's Cabin, which was the after show. And we had a lot of fun over there. So, if you are out there and you want to join us in there, come on in. Click on the YouTube link if you're in the Facebook page. If you comment in Facebook, we won't see it. Well, everybody else won't see it. You won't see them. You got to come over to the YouTube channel. That's just the way Facebook works. So let's get on with tonight's log. Captain's Log, the middle of the curve. This is the third of 5 episodes in this curved arc, metaphoric arc that we are, or an illustrative arc in this little series. And this is called the middle of the curve tonight. If you are just joining us, understand this first, that what we're in right now, in the moment, is an arc. It's 5 episodes, one continuous line, a deliberate bend through chaos toward meaning. And this is the third of 5. So every story that's out there, whether it be a story you read in fiction, literature, movies, wherever you hear a story, your own stories, they all have an arc to them. And every life does too. Episode 1 of the arc was the ignition point, the recognition that something irrevocable has begun. And we talked about parenting our children through some of those difficulties. Episode 2 was the ballast. That's the weight added on to purpose so we wouldn't capsize emotionally. Holding the line. Episode 3 is tonight. We're standing in the middle of the curve, and this is the hardest place for any of us to be. It's hard for me. The situation I'm in, it's hard for me. So because the beginning why is it hard? The beginning's burned away and the ending isn't quite yet fully visible. So it makes it a very difficult place to stand and hold our ground. The middle is where doubt whispers. The middle is where you're tempted to rush the story, to rewrite yourself, or to abandon the posture that you promised you'd keep. That's what happens right here in the middle. We've seen what's burned. We don't know where we're going. We want to rewrite. We want to rush it. We want to abandon our posturing that we promised ourselves we'd keep. But arcs don't work that way. An arc only holds if the center holds. It's like the keel of a boat. Think about it. Use the terms of like Noah's Ark, different kind of ark. ARK instead of ARC. And it wasn't built to sail anywhere. It was built to endure. Think about the Ark of the Covenant. It didn't move constantly. It rested, and where it rested, presence followed. So this arc, different spelling, but a good play on words, isn't about escape. It's about preservation of self while the waters rise. This episode is where you learn the discipline of not reacting. That's a tough one. We've all been in situations, you've been in situations that all we want to do is react. But this is about learning the discipline to not react, to not collapse inward, not chasing reassurance, not mistaking motion for progress. And I got to tell you right now, this moment of everything that has happened up to this moment over the last year, I am at my probably lowest rock bottom point as of today. And I'm working on, and this is why I'm sharing this with you, learning the discipline of not reacting, of not collapsing inward, of not chasing reassurances, of not making a motion for progress. Staying at your post doesn't mean standing still. It means standing true. Let me ask you something. Anybody out there listening, are you standing true? I'm not talking about just standing for what you said, what you say you believe in, where you want to be, the direction you've taken. Are you standing firm in the truth? Are you standing firm in wisdom? Look at your situations. Have you been honest with everyone around you? Do you tell the truth about your story? People you become involved with, are you telling them? Do they defend you and stand for you because they know the truth or because they've heard your version of a story? So, standing at your post and maintaining doesn't mean standing still, it means standing true. There's a myth that strength looks loud, that healing looks dramatic, that love requires constant proof through action. But some of the strongest moments in a person's life are the moments when they do nothing except remain aligned. If you don't think I want to be loud about some things, you'd be mistaken. Yeah, I have a voice. I have a lot of people, thousands of people who hear my voice. I could be very loud. I have a personality that could be very loud. I use words that could be taken, even in their softer moments, and be interpreted as very loud. Remaining aligned is also not passive. It's expensive. It costs you the illusion of control. It costs you the dopamine of reaction. It costs you the comfort of being seen as moving and doing something. You're moving forward. It's an illusion. But what you gain is sovereignty when you stand on truth, honesty, and wisdom. The arc only works if you don't abandon yourself at the midpoint. So tonight, if you're listening, if you're wondering whether you're failing because you haven't moved, hear this clearly. You're not stalled. You're not frozen. You're not behind. You're holding the curve. That's exactly where the structure bears the most weight. So this episode, it's episode 3 of this arc. We're now concluding. The doors remain sealed, the cargo remains intact, and the presence remains. The word has been given. And I have some affirmations for you. Look at me. If you're looking at your camera on your computer or your phone, hear these and repeat these in your head. I am steady in the middle of the curve. I do not confuse motion with progress. It's like we said earlier. Just because you're moving forward in your plan doesn't mean you're making any progress. You might be progressing backward, even though you're moving. So don't confuse motion with progress. I do not abandon myself to ease uncertainty. I remain aligned, even when the answers are incomplete. My silence is not weakness, it's discipline. My presence is enough. I trust the arc to carry me where I'm meant to arrive. But I cannot put my trust in something if I have not incorporated honesty, truth, and wisdom. Here's the benediction. May you rest tonight without rehearsing tomorrow. May you release the urge to explain yourself to the storm. May your spine stay straight and your heart stay soft. May what is not yours fall away without effort. And may the ark you're standing in deliver you intact to the far shore of this becoming. Go in steadiness. Hold the line. Stay at your post. And stay the course. Now, let's the rest of us stick around. We will open up the channels if you want to talk. We'll stick around as long as you want to stick around here in a sense, it's like an after show, the after show to the Captain's Log. So come on in, come on over. Let's talk a bit. I want to make sure that channel's off. It is. It's good. It's good. It's good. There we go. All right. So here we are, folks. Hey, Sorrow-Mental Steve. Sorrow-Mantic Steve. Good to see you. Michelle Kenham Freedom. Good to see you. And Barbie D. Good to see you over there. Ha. Josh Kemp. Nice to see you. Yeah, we do. One of these days. We'll have to have a private chat soon, Josh. Jay here. Good to see you. Intent. You put, now again, I'm going backwards. You might have said something before that. And Michelle said, growth and healing isn't linear. It steps backward. Steps backwards and is part of the dance. I am going to put up a link, by the way, if anybody wants to call in and chat a little bit. It's right there in the chat room now. Boom. You can click on that link and get right in here, and I'll see you come in. Looking to see what else we've got here. Steve said, I've heard the reverse phrase, don't just do something, stand there. Exactly. Scrolling backwards, looking at the comments. I'm going to pick up some comments. Roger is here. Good to see you, Roger. Good evening, everyone, he says. And still going backwards. It sounds like there's a lot of pauses here. It is because I'm just reading the chats. See if there's anything else up. And there's a lot of little chats in there. A lot of you have commented more than once. Many things along the way here, so thanks. All right, guys. This is your part of the show. Come on in. If you want to talk, call in. And we can talk a little bit. Otherwise, we'll wrap it. I am... I am more hollowed out this evening than I have been ever. I don't have much left today. But I can sit and talk. I was sitting here just before, 5 minutes before the show started. And I said, I can't wait till this is over so I can go out and have a smoke. That's been my stress reliever today. And of course, the people that have brought this on are not the person or the people you want to see you in this state, because you take a strong stance and you say, this is where I will be. I will tell you this, I was talking to Rocky Stucci today. Many of you familiar with Rocky Stucci. And he wants us to start. Hey, Rhonda Mason. Good to see you. Nice to have you here tonight. So glad you made it in. Rocky said, yo, cannoli. And those of you who know Rocky know what that means, know what the show we did together. And we've done separate shows and together shows for years. He went and ran off to The Blaze, Glenn Beck's network, and did a political talk radio show with Matt Locke a few years back. And then he ended up going to Texas to operate with that studio down there. Did his own talk shows. He still does his own stream now, but he does a lot more producing. And he said, let's do a show again. So we devised it today. We even started a marketing plan. I should show you because I can. I'm going to go grab an image and show you what this is. The new show that we're going to do is not like this. Well, it'll have elements that are like this one. There it is. There's the logo. It's called Cognitive Chaos Radio with Rocky Stucci and Scotty Roberts. Cognitive chaos. What does that mean? And I've got a little a press kit we started putting together today. Rocky did most of the work on this one. Let's see if I've got it saved. I don't have it saved. I'll find it and we'll put it up here. But we started putting this all together today. And he said, now's a good time, man. Let's just do this. And I'm like, yeah, on board, brother, on board. And so here is the, I'll show this and I'll kind of read it for you because the type's going to be kind of small. And I got to save this. Hold on. Save images. I'm going to go over into Cognitive Chaos folder and save that. Okay. See if we can call this up now. It's the way these things work, folks. But, it's with relative ease that I can do this. Imagine the things we're doing now and the tech we're doing now. We couldn't have done that when I was a younger man. Here we go. All right. Cognitive Chaos Radio, mission statement. Cognitive Chaos Radio exists to explore serious ideas through intentional disorder. Reject scripts, agendas, artificial polish. I can't read that. I'm trying to read it without my cheaters. Hold on. Clarified. Something's garbled there. With clarity. D's. I can't even read that. I don't know what happened there. On topics. Oh, there's some typos here. Oh, I think that this was just filler when he was putting this together. Our mission is to create the space where experience matters more than outrage, humor and depth coexist, and wisdom is allowed to arrive the long way around. So that's the Cognitive Chaos is going to be the new Rocky and Scotty show. So Jay here says, I've been leaning on cigarettes lately. Leaning, meaning getting lean, the active form of making lean. You've been leaning on cigarettes, or you're leaning on them as a prop. I'm doing that right now. And I've never been a heavy smoker, but I opened a pack this morning and I opened a second pack earlier this evening. So that's been my day. Special needs mom life has very rare air, I'll bet. So Roger says, I'm somber today as well, but the talk of you and Rocky doing a show perks me up. I'm glad, Roger. Thanks, brother. Michelle says, my phone remembers to prompt the hug emoji after I type your name. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I hope that was for me. It's a great title. New beginnings, says Jay here. Yes, indeed. And you know what? All we've done is devise a marketing plan for this. The way to present it, the way to put it out there. We haven't talked about a single show yet. We just devised this afternoon. We could get on radio in an hour and carry it off because we know what we're doing. That sounds cocky, but we do know what we're doing. Yeah, you and Rocky have synergy, says Michelle. You're damn straight we do. Yes, crutch. That's what I thought. It's for you and for you all, the hugs, I think. Just saying. So, yeah, there it is, folks. That's one big new announcement. Tonight we don't have any dates or times or how often we're going to do it yet. But there it is. Cognitive Chaos Radio. And so when that comes, I'll let you know all about it. Rocky will be broadcasting that off of his servers, his radio servers. Michelle says, you're strengthening me, Scotty. Thank you so much. Well, I hope these captain's logs have some efficacy in that respect, that it helps strengthen us all. What you find with my captain's logs is I talk a hell of a lot about my issues, my problems, the things I'm facing. But those are the things that have been the catalyst to trying to invite you to look at the things you have and find ways to work through things. I'm a little dead inside tonight. Everything I said tonight, I wrote that before. Some things happened today, and all fitting, all proper. I am surprised sometimes by the lack in people that we have known and loved so well, being able to see clearly how truth and honesty become things that are conveniences for the moment, as opposed to consistency of life. How the seeking of wisdom hasn't even been let into the front door yet. Yo, Pamela Zaspel-Torsen. Pamela, how you doing? Glad you're here. I kind of missed you last night. I didn't see you when you got in here right away. There's Pamela, an old friend of mine. And it's good to see you here. And we need to get together for some coffee, if that's okay. Sometime. The face-to-face thing. I've known Pamela since, oh my God, I think I was in junior high school, middle school, 8th or 9th grade. Because when I was a kid, I was just talking to my daughter about this last night. 7th, 8th, and 9th grade were considered junior high school. 10th, 11th, and 12th were considered high school. And of course, with my kids now, 5th grade is when you go into middle school. 9th grade, you go into high school. So it's all turned up on its ear. So I've known Pamela probably since I was in 8th or 9th grade. Sorry, Pamela, I just aged you as old as me. I'm so glad you're here, though. It's nice to see you here. Jay here says, be patient and listen. Yeah. There are times where you have to just say, this is it. Do my best. Here, this is for you, Pamela. My best, Captain Picard. The line will be drawn here. There are 4 lights. So, she's a fellow Star Trek fan. So, Steve, I went to high school. He asked, can I ask where you went to high school? I went to a church school, high school, with our old church in Minneapolis, Fourth Baptist Church. And I did my high school there, 10th through 12th grades, at the Fourth Baptist High School. And they always called it K through 12 there was called the Fourth Baptist, or the Fourth Baptist Christian Day School or something like that. And as high schoolers, we're like, we don't go to a day school. This is a high school. So we started calling it Fourth Baptist High. So make it so. Make it so, number one. So, I think, Pamela, I told you this story, and most of my listeners have heard this once or twice over the years. Back in 1994, man, does that seem like a long time ago now or what? I was in LA doing business, and a good friend of mine affiliated with Star Trek, Dan Madsen, got me and the couple of people I was with doing out there. We were selling animation properties, some of the studios, and we ended up getting Dan cleared us to go visit the Star Trek Next Generation sets. And so there we show up to the Paramount backlot all in double-breasted suits and ties, and pockets, looking very suave. And so we got into tour the Star Trek sets for the Next Generation television show. Chuck Hendrickson, love you right back, Chuck. Good to see you, brother. And so while we were touring the sets, we were in the big hangar. It's like a Quonset hut, only 10 times bigger. Like it could hold a 747 jumbo jet in there. And that's where they filmed the underground, like the cave scenes and outdoor planet scenes, and it's all sets. Walking by as we're standing there, kind of leaning on a rail that was overlooking the makeup area, bunch of aliens. It was an episode you'd recognize if you're familiar with the show that they were filming. So there were a ton of aliens in it. But there goes Patrick Stewart over there, walking with the director. He's in full uniform. And she's nodding, and they're walking toward the back door. And David Rossi was the guy who picked us up. And he said, "You want to meet Patrick?" I said, "Sure do." "Wait here," he said. He goes out the door. He comes back in a minute later, and he says, "Come on over here." And so we go outside, and it's about 4:30 in the afternoon. I don't remember what month it was, but the sun wasn't too steep yet, the shadow of the building. There's Patrick Stewart sitting in a tall director's chair reading his script, and he's in full uniform. David says, "Patrick, I want you to meet my buddy Scotty." And Patrick Stewart stands up and he says, "Oh, hello." And, and he shakes my hand. And we got to talking a little bit. He had done a production. I don't know if he wrote it or co-wrote it, but he directed and produced it. They were touring the country with it with a few of the members of the cast of Star Trek, but it was a play that they did for Amnesty International. It was called Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. And it was about third world dissidency. And the play was airing at the Northrop Auditorium on the University of Minnesota campus. And so I didn't know what to talk to Patrick Stewart about other than, "Hi, how you doing?" I didn't want to be a stupid fan. In episode 142, when you had to shoot that Klingon, did you feel grief in your heart? No, I didn't ask anything like that. And I said, "Say, I saw your play. Every Good Boy Deserves Favor." And his eyebrows went up and he goes, "Oh, you did?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, what did you think?" So I'm put on the spot now. Now I got to be a critic. Well, I found it pithy and perspicacious. I give it a hearty 2 thumbs up. No, I said, and we talked about it for a couple of minutes. And so I'm so glad you got to see it. Such a joy doing it, and so on and so on. So I didn't do the whoopee cushion on the captain's chair trick, Steve. Oh, I suppose it's the old whoopee cushion on the captain's chair trick, huh? No. Every word hyphenated. No, but we did from there after meeting him, David Rossi. And by the way, you look at any Star Trek production now, that was in 94. David Rossi was the gopher driving the golf cart, picked us up, toured us around. You see him now in executive producer slots in the credits on like all the Star Trek shows and the movies and stuff like that. So he moved up at Paramount with Star Trek. And so he took us into the sets, and the sets were abandoned. Nobody was there because they were all filming in the cave scene in the hangar. And so he brings us in. You see the outsides of the sets, 2x4s and stuff like that. He takes us to what is obviously the outside of the bridge. And he said, "Wait here." And he goes inside the bridge, through the captain's office, the captain's ready room. And you hear this chunk and all the lights come up. "Okay, come on in." And we come in. It's the wall behind Picard's desk pulled out. as a door, and we walked in there, and we're in Picard's office, and the goldfish was in there swimming, or whatever kind of fish it was. I don't remember. He said, that's the same fish. It's still alive from season 1, episode 1. It's been alive in that tank the whole time. So then he took us through the doors into the bridge. And the only thing different is the big view screen was pulled out because they bring cameras in there to film the straight-on shots. And you saw the big swoop in the back of the bridge where Worf stood up on top, and the captain's chair and the 2 chairs, one along the side. But there was a big canvas fitted thing that was sewn over it to keep it dust-free and dirt-free. And he said, help me with this. So we pull all that off, and I'm pulling all the covers off of the chairs and the control panels on the bridge. And it was very cool. And he said, you want to sit in the captain's chair, don't you? And I go, what? And of course, this is 94. We didn't have digital cameras on phones back then. So I didn't get any pictures, and I was told I couldn't take any anyway, but we didn't have a camera with us anyway. So I sat in the captain's chair, and he says, say the words. And I go, make it so, engage. And so that was great. Then we went into the briefing room. Maybe that's the ready room. And then we stood out in the elevator, which doesn't go anywhere. Went out through one of the other side doors and came out in the long hallway. Ended up down that long curved hallway. We ended up in engineering. And that's the only one that was lit up to look theatrical. He said that they've got it all lit up today because the technical crew is working on lighting and stuff. So we walked in there, and all the big warp engine, no sound, that's all added in post, but the warp engine was pulsing blue. And the lights were on. And not all the panels are live. Some of that's added in post-production. So there I was, standing in engineering. And it was very cool. And when I got to lay on a medical bed, and we got to stand on the transporter, and all of that stuff was very cool. So that was my experience there. I didn't see Patrick Stewart again that day, but I now call him Pat, because we're buddies. So, yeah, I don't know how I got off onto that rabbit trail, but that's fantastic memory. And that was now, when I think about it, that was 32 years ago. Star Trek: The Next Generation has been off the air for 30 years. Can you believe it? So anyway, epic story. Yes, it is, Michelle. Yes, it is. Alexandra Adams, good to see you. Glad you could make it in. It was an awesome experience. Thanks, Pamela. It's a great story. I had a good time with that. And so that was my one brush with Star Trek fame. And then when I was publishing my own magazine, Intrepid Magazine, back 2011, 12, 13, 14, back in there, Dan Madsen also had lined up an interview with me with William Shatner, who Captain Kirk was my hero when I was a kid. He lined it all up, and his publicists were trying to get dates. And the way he got Shatner to agree to it, he sent him an article I wrote that mentioned him in psychological stuff connected with me when I was a kid, and how he was my hero. And Shatner said, oh, yeah, I'll talk to him. And I said, you tell Shatner or his publicist, I'll fly down there on a moment's notice whenever they have the date set. Then something came up, and something came up, and something came up, and it never happened. So it was sad. I never got to meet him. I hope to still someday. The hats I wear, I was going to point. They're out in the other room on a hat rack in the entryway. But my fedoras, John Penman hats. Yeah, Pamela, I almost did. Almost did. Shatner was going to do this with me because he read my article. It was an article I read, I wrote for my magazine. And he read it and said, yeah. He says to Dan, my friend, he says, yeah, I'll do that. Line it up with my publicist. But it never happened. Ah, Shatner's Law, says Steve. Do you guys tell me yes or no? We got a few minutes before I can take off, and it'll help me spend the evening a little better. Do you want to hear that article? Because I can call it up, and I can read it to you. Let's see if this is, I think I have the latest version up here. I had to edit it for something once. So let's see, log in, continue with my email. Boom. There me is. Add my password. Boom. And log in. Please check your email to verify this log. I hate these double things. Hold on. Just calling up the article. It's on my academia.edu site where I posted this article up. But I wrote this article back in, trying to think of what year it was. It was a ways back. 15, 20 years ago. I think I wrote it before I was married to Rainey. We were together for 21 years. So wrote this article maybe 25 years ago. Here's the article. Keeps taking me through all these. Check password, check, okay, blah, amplify, blah. Okay, I got to get to my profile here. My profile. And this is an article. It's pretty heavy, folks. Heavy duty. Some of you who have heard my radio show heard me read this once before. It's an article entitled, "Oh, Captain, My Captain." And the tags no, I don't want premium. Thank you. Psychology, parenting, fatherhood, fathering and fathers, Star Trek, fathering, show more, etc. So this is an article, and I put this in here. This is an article I originally wrote when I was leading a men's group in my church. The group's focus was on men and fathers in troubled relationships and family situations, and I updated this article to reflect some more private information regarding the psychological tricks of the mind, incorporated as subconscious coping mechanisms. My focus was the fictional Captain Kirk. So, if you didn't want to hear this, you're going to either be forced into it now, or you can leave, because I'm going to go ahead and read. And Pam, you being one of my oldest friends in here, you might find interest in this, and anybody else listening. Here we go. It's called, "Oh, Captain, My Captain." When I was a kid, I didn't think much about the kind of dad I would someday become. I was too busy daydreaming and doing the stuff that young boys do in their prepubescent years to think about such distant things. My own father was an unknown, faceless stranger whom I had met only one afternoon when I was 16, but never really got to know until I turned 30 and was about to be a father for the first time myself. I was the middle child of three, a so-called latchkey kids, whose young, attractive single mom worked hard as a waitress for meager pay and a few lousy tips. She would head to her job at a small dive of a pub every day before I got home from school, leaving instructions to throw frozen pot pies into the oven for supper, and for me and my siblings to be in bed by 9 p.m. She had a few boyfriend relationships in and out of the home during those years, but none of them ever became a permanent fixture. Consequently, I created in my own mind, a masculine patriarch, composed of the figures of fatherhood and masculinity that television of the late 1960s and early 1970s had to offer. I soaked them up like a sponge. During my childhood afternoons, I precariously balanced my time in the sunshine or out playing in the yard with the dimly lit basement of my mother's home, watching television. Every day, for several hours a day, I absorbed the varied heroes of television, the sheriffs, outlaws, adventurers, and secret agents in such shows as Robin Hood, The Wild Wild West, Lost in Space, and Gunsmoke. They were the manly icons that constructed my view of what masculinity was. The varied fictional elements that comprised the amalgamated yet imaginary surrogate father of my youth. But out of them all, there was one hero who stood head and shoulders above the rest. No other televised character could compare with the fictional leader who, to me in my childhood, represented an image of what I wanted to become as a man. He was an escape from the emotional turmoil of my youth, designed by his creator to be the Horatio Hornblower of outer space. The adventurer's adventurer, the hero's hero, the leader, the visionary, the intellectual man's man were all embodied in Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise, who single-handedly established for me the image of what I began to believe a man was really supposed to be. Now, there was something very different about the good captain that struck a chord of harmony with that little boy back in the late 1960s. And it wasn't until recent years, I remember this was originally written in 94, 95, right around there. And it wasn't until recent years that I was able to uncover the buried emotions of my past to discover why, as a young boy, I found a kindred spirit in, if you will, this fictitious space-age adventurer. Now, for the record, I must state that while I adhere to the tenets of good psychology, I have a sincere loathing of much of the psychobabbly gobbledygook associated with the more non-scientific facet of the craft. And quite frankly, as a guy, I'm not always comfortable revealing the deeper, darker side of my emotional makeup. Now, you think I might do that, by the way, as an aside on this show? I don't. I said I came in here and this is probably the lowest rock bottom day of my life is today. And I put on a good front. So I'm not always comfortable revealing the deeper, darker side of my emotional makeup. I can talk a good talk about emotions, but feelings? They're as elusively difficult to articulate. So if in this little exercise, I delve into either of those areas too deeply for your comfort zone, extend some gracious latitude by accepting what you can and leaving for another time that which you cannot. Now, I'm going to tell you, this gets a little deep here and maybe a little uncomfortable for some people. Hey, is that Race Spennin? Is that my friend Race Hobbs? Good to see you. Love you, brother. I think that's you. I will call you the man in the morning for coffee. Yes, brother. Let's do it. Diana Atkinson, welcome. Good to see you. Carly Sagan, love you. All right, here we go. This is where it gets a little deep, and if you're going to be uncomfortable, this is the place to do it. Now, for the record, I must state that while I adhere... I already read that paragraph, sorry. As I was growing up, I buried myself in the lore of Star Trek, idolizing its main character, mimicking his mannerisms and his persona. You are on very shaky ground with me if you ever criticized the captain or his show to my face. There was a need for escape during those formative years of my life, and I have since learned that I used my affinity with Kirk as a means of burying the things that were too painful for me to deal with in the open. In a figurative sense, I took my childhood pains and buried them in a metaphoric tin can somewhere out there in my backyard. And now as an adult man searching for the source of buried anger, hidden pain, and modes of operation, I've stepped out into that old backyard in the misty dark of midnight with nothing but a flashlight, shovel, and the tattered pieces of an old hand-drawn map sketched out so many years ago. X marks the spot. This way to the buried treasure, being barely legible in the folds of age. Captain Kirk to me was a lonely man. Sure, he had friends and advisors and a great many lovers, but at his core, when you stripped away all the facades of his position, he was a man alone. The pains and mistakes of his past molded him into the person he was. His inner pain drove him to singularity, and he conquered his demons by cheating them and scrapping his way into the light. I sometimes wonder what it was that William Shatner, the actor, drew upon in molding the character, how much of him was actually Kirk. I had a great many demons in need of eradication, and though I had no understanding or knowledge of the language or techniques of psychology, I found an ally in the starship captain when I effectively buried in him the things with which I was unable to cope. At the tender age of 6, my older brother and I were repeatedly sexually abused by a male babysitter, the older brother of a childhood friend. His name was Clement, and he was supposed to keep watch over us while our single mother was away working as a waitress. Knowledge of these goings-on were kept very secret. My brother and I, under threat, never said anything of the incidents to our mother. The sexual abuse, along with the years of physical abuse, became the stuff of hidden baggage that much later in my life. The subconscious anger and the rage at being controlled and the fear of being abandoned that manifested in me as a child found a deep, secure burial when I discovered in Captain Kirk a father who would take away the pain. These weren't conscious cognitive actions on my part, but rather the natural subconscious survival techniques of a mind too young to know how to deal with what went wrong. The memories of the abuse never left me, but because I buried the feelings, those memories faded from full, vibrant color to black and white with a few shades of gray. And when I reached the age of adulthood, I could recount the memories of the abuse, but could never get in touch with how it actually affected me inside. And quite frankly, I was oblivious to the damage that had been done. In a very real sense, Kirk was the key to the unraveling of the mystery of my buried past. As I grew older, I grew less and less enchanted with the fantasy of Star Trek and its characters, and more into the mechanics of how a program like that was created and developed. I found that as I matured and in all earnestness sought to reconcile my past and dig for the missing pieces, Kirk became less and less of a necessity. I realize this now, but back then I had no clue of what was happening. The understanding has come with the retrospect. As I began to learn more about myself and how to cope with the pain of the past, the captain simultaneously became less of a hero figure and more of what he actually was, a fictional television character. As I learned to deal with my past, he became less important in a sense. He held my pain until I was able to handle it myself. Funny how the mind works. As I became a young man, I had no clue as to the nature of my buried issues. I had the memories, but I didn't know about buried issues. And it wasn't until I hit my early 30s that a lot of this stuff even started to surface. By that time, Kirk had long passed into the realm of childhood hero, replaced with a fondness that attached itself to the memory of how much I had idolized him as a kid and respected the actor who created it. And I'm convinced it was because he carried my pain. But there's even more. When I was in my mid-30s, I started seeing a therapist as a result of problems in other areas. I wanted to find out what was really making me tick, because it seemed as if not all the puzzle pieces were on the table. In one particular session, the therapist offered up a new technique at the time that she was using that involved a sort of mild waking hypnosis. She simply held a pencil. I have one here. I can show you exactly what she did. She took a pencil and she did something like this. And I don't know how fast she went. She had it balanced. It was like almost a rubbery, wavy effect. And she waved it out here in front of me. She said, concentrate on this, she told me. So the therapist offered up this new technique she was using that involved this mild form of hypnosis. She held a pencil in the air between us and moved it from side to side. And as she did this, she asked me to focus on any picture that came into my mind. As she did this, she asked me to focus on any picture that came into my mind. Sorry, skipped a line there. Redid a line. She said to not relive the experience, but to observe whatever the memory was, as if it were being projected on a movie screen or passing by my eyes outside the window of an imaginary train on which I was a passenger. She made no suggestion, but merely asked me to concentrate on the first image that entered my mind. I don't know why, but the first image that popped into my mind's eye was a rather disturbing experience that took place when I was about 8 or 9 years old. In this movie, playing back in my head, I saw a memory in which my brother and I were cowering on the kitchen floor where we were being severely beaten with a belt. This beating was more than a mere disciplinary spanking. It was an outright anger-driven lashing. At the core of the beating was the goal to get one of us to confess whose belt it was had been found lying on the kitchen table. We both insisted it was the other's, and the whipping commenced until one of us would fess up. I remember we were shrieking in pain and crying wildly at each lash of the belt. By the time the angry lashing subsided, my brother and I were covered from neck to calves with purple, black, and blue welts. The beatings were so severe that during our parkboard swimming lessons the next afternoon, Pamela, you would know this if you're still there, the Brooklyn Center Civic Center, the pool up there. The next afternoon, the instructors made us wear our t-shirts into the pool so no one would see the markings left by the punishment. Nowadays, my mother would have lost us as her kids. So I looked at my therapist and mumbled something like, shit, I don't know where that image came from. And she very calmly told me to simply go with the incident. She didn't lead me in any way, but she continued to move the pencil back and forth, asking me to concentrate on that image and tell me anything else that came to my mind. What I saw next made me chuckle in discomfort and wonder if I was simply conjuring up images out of my head that had no bearing on what she was attempting to accomplish. What do you see now? She said. Don't worry if it seems funny or weird. Just go with what you see. What I saw next was an image of Captain Kirk, dressed in his green gold Starfleet tunic, black trouser, booted uniform, kneeling on the floor next to me while I was being beaten. His arm was up in the air, blocking the blows being administered with the belt, while his other arm was wrapped around my shoulders, holding me close in protection. I looked at the therapist and shook my head and again laughed out of discomfort of not knowing why this particular image was coming into my head. I said I must have a really active imagination. She again assured me it was fine and to continue going with whatever imagery was coming and to continue relating whatever I saw next. The scene in my head morphed from the kitchen floor to the concrete stoop outside the back door of our house, where Captain Kirk sat next to me, his arm around my shoulder, comforting me as I cried. Then the image of a religiously stereotypical Jesus Christ, clad in the long white tunic and a red robe, faded into the picture. He was sitting on my other side, while both he and Kirk enveloped me in the middle, wrapped in their arms. Then the image was gone. I sat back in my chair uncomfortably, weeping in front of the therapist not understanding what the hell all that imagery was all about and what exactly it had to do with anything I was going through. It was then that she told me I would not believe how many men my age had similar sorts of images of Captain Kirk during this sort of therapy. She went on to explain how Kirk was for me, and apparently many other young boys of my age group, the hero that was more than a hero. Kirk was a sort of psychological savior who boys looked to for strength and a way to cope. So what does all of this have to do with the beginning of the article about being a dad? Easy. In a very real sense, the fictional character of James T. Kirk became what I believe to be a divinely appointed receptacle for the issues that God knew I was just not able to handle. And as I grew stronger and more able to cope with these issues, that God began releasing the facts. Of course, you have to believe in a higher power of some sort for this to make any real sense beyond the simple psychology of it all. My quest is still a work in progress, but I feel as though every day is a step in the right direction toward healing and overcoming my past. I don't camp my life at the foot of my past pains. I simply now know where to look as a starting point. Something else I learned through all of these experiences, and this delves deeper into an issue of faith. God is there for me to dump on. That great someone out there seems to crave my trust and waits with open arms to receive my messes. Though the older I get, the more faceless and nameless that God becomes. God wrestles with us in the night times of our lives, yet at daybreak, he is gone. And we're left only with ourselves and our acquired strengths and skills to scramble out of the pit. As a father and a dad, I want to instill in my children a trust in me. I want them to grow up knowing who their father is and that their dad is always available. I want them to grow up knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that they can dump on me and have full faith that I am there to receive them as they are and hold them up. And as they learn to trust and have faith in me, they will inevitably learn to trust and have faith in the God they so choose. After all, in the same sense, wasn't it supposed to be God who established fatherhood as a picture of what he ultimately is to humankind? A valuable lesson I learned out of my past is this: dads, or moms as the case may be, are the best portrait of God children will ever have. Don't let them find that picture in someone else or something else. Give kids what they're by nature craving. Be there for them and show them a little bit of God. There you go. That's the article. That was my hero, Captain Kirk. So, I'm looking back at some of your comments. Jeremy Hansen is here. I think being a man and thinking through your emotion is okay. Stoicism is part of the human existence. You're right, Jeremy. Good to see you here, by the way, brother. Steph Cuervo Queen. I love my therapist, she says, and we've tried that technique. Chris Rufert, good to see you, brother. I think it's common for men raised in the 70s and the 80s to be emotionally closed off. Perhaps not completely, but reserved and for any number of reasons. Although I had a great dad, here I should put that up there so you can see it. I can see over the top of that. Although I had a great dad, he was gone a lot, and my heroes in TV and movies, I feel, influenced who I am in many ways just as much. And in some cases, perhaps these people, although fiction, gave us examples of who we aspire to be. Yeah, very true. So I see Steph here again. Hello, Scotty. Hello, Steph. We got to talk tomorrow. And she says, damn it, I'm late again. It starts at 9 o'clock Central Time. Steph, we've been going an hour now. I don't know what time you got in here. Oh, 9:53. Something like that. 54. Carly Sagan says, abuse is so hard to handle. Something you battle healing them for life. Yeah, that's true. And if not healing, at least understanding how all your modes of operation and your understanding were based in that, and you fight it the rest of your life. I'm doing that thing. Going back the other way now, toward the end. I have no words, said Michelle. I think it's called something like EDMR. Helps with with trauma therapy, says Steph. I can identify, says Elderberry. I think you and I are about the same age, Elderberry. And Steph says, I know it triggered memories with me, she said. Disassociation, said Michelle Cannon-Freed. Carly, Steph says, Carly, we used that in the beginning to start me off because I was willing to try it with her. Cool. Barbie D says, I'm not sure I want to remember things now. I wish I could stop remembering those PTSD things. C-PTSD? I don't know what the C- is. That's weird that I don't know that. Yeah, you're right, Michelle. Michelle says, you broke the intergenerational curse cycle, Scotty. I think so. Steve said, oh, wait, that was Steph. I'm sorry. Therapy isn't easy, that's for sure, but once you see and feel the progress, it's worth it. What did Steve say? Oh, we're breaking the cycle. I used to say breaking the chain. You're right, Steve. Pamela says, wow, I'm glad I tuned in. I'm speechless. Thanks, Pamela. You know how happy it is that you're here. How happy I am about that. It's so nice to see you and to have reconnected after all these years. Alexandra Adams says, we all have our own coping mechanisms we use to deal with, and I feel it's normal. You're right. Complex, says Carly. Steph says, yep, I learned trauma I didn't know I had, and I learned to identify my triggers and how to deal with them. And Steph said, that's wonderful. Or Carly said, Steph, that's wonderful. I'm going to tell you something. There's the one thing I learned, and I mentioned it in the article. With all this learning, I know a lot of people who can name their traumas and their past, but they camp there. They don't leave it there, all the way back there, and they camp there. That's where they stay and remain. Healing comes when you realize you can leave that trauma back there, and not that it erases, it'll always be a memory, but it's a memory back there, not up here. And I'll tell you, I put on a pretty fucking good front. Pardon my French. I am at absolute emotional trauma today. This close to breaking down. And the only thing that keeps me from doing that is doing this. I got to do this. I'm talking. Field guy. Is Field guy here? There he is. Hi, Steph. Hey, Fieldy. Good to see you, brother. So, leave it in the past. It doesn't belong in the present. And if you keep it in the present, This sounds so redundant. If you keep it in the present, you're never going to leave it in the past. It will always be with you. Stop embracing it. It's like, Pamela, you'll know what I'm talking about here. You're a Star Trek fan. Some of you have, and I've mentioned this before years ago on my radio show. There was a show that everybody seemed to like, one of the Star Trek shows, Deep Space Nine. And I didn't watch it as faithfully as the other shows. I was just too busy in life. But I liked it. And in the very first episode, the man who played Captain Sisko, he's encountering this spiritual being on this planet that the space station circles. And it's speaking to him. And I don't remember what the plot twist was, but prior to the show starting, the history of the character, his wife was a starship captain who was killed in, it's 11:11. Well, now it's 10:12 here. Was killed on her starship. She was a captain of a ship. She was killed in an attack with the Borg or something like that. And that's his memory. And this entity, I can't remember what they called it, the emissary, I think it was. The voice spoke to him, and he's standing on the bridge of his space station there, all alone, and the voice asks him, a woman's voice, said, where do you exist? He's standing there on the bridge, and he looks and he says, I exist here. And then the whole scene switches. He's standing on the bridge of his wife's ship after watching her die. She had died, and that's in flames and everything. He's watching. And the voice says, then why do you exist here? He blinked again, and I think it happened twice, because then he's back on his own bridge. It's quiet and peaceful. And she said, where do you exist? He looks around and says, here. Then it switches back to the bridge where his wife died. It says, then why are you existing here? And the point is a great illustration. If we exist here in the present, why are we existing back there? Why is that where we're living? I'm having a hard time today catching up inside myself with the things I've taught for so many years. If I exist here, why am I existing there? And maybe it's something we could all look at our own things. Not everybody has trauma. Maybe you had a great childhood, and this is all like, wow, I didn't experience any of that. Be happy you didn't. But I will say at the same time, as a human race, we are all fucked up. There's not a one of us that doesn't have something that has gone on of one form or degree of another. Michelle says we're divinely protected, supported, comforted, and guided by angels. I always loved that song. And it was a song my mom sang. My mom ran a karaoke business all through the 90s, the 2000s, and even till today. My mom is 83. She's living in Yuma, Arizona, and she still runs her karaoke business. And she's a phenomenal singer. My mom, 80 is the new 60 with my mom. And back in 1999, was it? Yeah, 99. She was shot in her home in the chest by her estranged husband. And he was on the lam. Was on the lam for 10 months. She had run from him into the garage. He chased her, circled around the van. There was the other car was in the garage too, and she got back after doing one of her karaoke shows, and she jumped in her car and locked the door. He had come around the other way. If he had gone the same way right behind her, he'd have caught up to her. He gets there, and then his gun jammed, and he couldn't shoot again. And he starts banging on the glass with his gun, and she throws the car into reverse, crashes through the closed garage door that she had just entered and closed, out onto the street, and drove to the police station and got into their little vestibule there, and somebody in the window is going to help you, and she collapsed right there, and they took her to the hospital. And a week later, it was interesting. She was needing something from her purse. I was visiting with my sister, and she said, "It's in my wallet." And I took her purse and I dug in her wallet, and everything started falling out in crumbled pieces. I said, "What the hell?" All her credit cards had crumbled into bits, and I found the bullet. It had gone through her. She had her purse over her shoulder. It had gone through her chest, through her lung, and into the purse hanging on her shoulder and into the wallet, and lodged itself there. And so she lucked out. But she also says, "I have no memory of getting in that car. I remember running. I don't remember getting in. I don't remember locking the door. I don't remember turning on the ignition or slamming through the closed garage door with the car." And at her karaoke show, everybody loved my mom, Janie. And there was a guy that would sing a song, and she can hardly bear to hear it nowadays because it's such a reminder to her of this time. And Michelle Canham Free, I think I croaked this out for you once before in a recording, but it's that song. Some people may not like it because it's it might seem a little corny to them, but who is it? Is it not the Oak Ridge Boys? Who did this song that, "I believe there are angels among us, sent," and pardon my voice, "sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live." You know the song. And that's what I think about when Michelle said the thing about angels. Didn't God say in the New Testament, when you meet strangers, give them hospitality because you never know when you're entertaining angels unaware? We're surrounded by God's spirits. How many things would have killed us or led us astray if we didn't realize, if we didn't know? Oh, not knowing that spiritual entities of God's protected us. Alabama, that was the group. Thank you, Sean Stroik. So, I have to think about that even now in my own current situation. So, think about it. Well, anyway, as semi-therapeutic as this is for me to be talking tonight, Field Guy says, by the way, magic number of my family is 88. 3 of my grandparents died at that age. Wow. Means I only have 23 years left if I was your grandpa. So, there it is, Lucky Stone. Hey, Lucky. Don't neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. I'm going to tell you something. This is a story you may have heard me mention once before. I was at a paranormal convention here in Minneapolis where I was reading tarot and I was a speaker and had a table there. Um, Went outside to have a smoke. This is many years ago. Flynn had just been born, and well, he was not quite a year old. So this would have been 2017 or 2018. And I stood outside, and there was an old homeless man there wearing a green army jacket. And I think this was in October or something. It was cold, but not harsh cold. No snow yet or anything, but he asked if I could spare some change. He was very gaunt, had a long, white, scraggly beard, pockets full of stuff. And I reached in my pocket. I didn't have any change, and I pulled out what was in my pocket, and I had a $5 bill. And I said, I don't have any change. I said, but I can give you this $5. Will you promise me you'll take it and eat and not just drink? So you have my word. I gave him the $5 bill, and he walked away, but then he turned around and came back. He was digging in his front pocket. And he turned around and he had something about the size of a dime. And it was a little relief tin, like almost like tin foil weight, but they're made, you buy them in church bookstores for Sunday school teachers to give away to their kids, a little Jesus pendant that was about the thickness of almost tin foil. And he had his hand like this, and he says, put out your hand. And I put out my hand, and he went like this, and he put it in there, and he grabbed my hand. Then he looked at me, and as clear as you and I can talk now, because he was very incoherent, it seemed, before that, he said, I'm going to talk to God about you tonight. This is yours, take it. And he turned and he walked away. I never saw him again. He wasn't there the next day or any of the other days of the event, and he gave me that little pendant of the head of Jesus, a profile, like a coin almost. And I stopped and think at one point about him, and I thought, was that an old homeless vet, or was that an angel? And the only reason I ask that is not to be fanciful or turn the story into something it isn't, but to say, is this what God meant when he said, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares? The book of Hebrews in the New Testament, 13:2. And I thought, was this an angel? I never saw him the rest of that day, and I never saw him again. Could be a million subjective answers to that question. Who was he? Where'd he go? And I thought, was that an angel for me? Or an angel I had encountered? That to me is an interesting question. And one that I don't think is too weird or fanciful to ask. Because we live in a spiritual universe. So there you go, folks. A lot of stuff tonight. A lot of talking. I would ask you to keep me in your prayers. I am not good tonight. I have bravado. I could get up and tap dance for you. So, I'm not looking forward to just being alone with my thoughts tonight. Now, I've been alone since I moved into my house, other than my cat. It's like I said, I talk to my cat and my sandwiches. So, I'm trying to apply everything I try to teach here. And if it sometimes seems like I use my own how do I want to say that? My own shortcomings, my own problems, my things that happen to me, it's because I do. Because that's how I'm teaching myself and learning how to be. I am still becoming. So I'm going to close tonight with something I did the other night as well. Because to me, this is important. And even though I wrote it, it's something that has great meaning to me. And that's that poem I wrote. And it's at the end of my book. And I've just happened to call it up here on the computer so I don't have to try to read that in the dark. The poem it's becoming almost a mantra for me. It's a middle of the night toast. Here you go, folks. Listen for a moment to the slow push of the dark. We've been punched and patched and stitched back together with stubborn thread. We keep our shoulder to the wheel, not because it's easy, but because we're the kind of fools who believe the story isn't finished yet. Here's to the bruises that taught us how to be careful, and the scars that remind us we were never broken beyond repair. Here's to the small, ridiculous mercies, a warm cup, a dog's wet nose, the way your teenager laughs when you say something they think is funny. Those are the lodestars. To the nights when the breath rattles and the world looks like a ledger of losses, you survived the counting. To the mornings that come anyway, thin, ordinary, holy, we rise and we keep walking. That's the stubborn work of living. So pour a glass for the ghosts we've outlived and the stories we refuse to quit. Tip it toward the sky, not because we own it, but because we won't let it own us. One more smoke. One more swear. One more stupid laugh. We're still here. God help us. We're still here. Everyone, thanks for being here. Stay the course.